Guten Abend und herzlich willkommen bei dem Video über Kapitel 6. Also ich möchte ein bisschen darüber sprechen, nämlich, also bitte schauen Sie sich Seite 172, nämlich Kapitel 6. Also wir gehen aus, we're going out. Und hier haben wir einige Leute. Wir haben da also diese Frau hier, der Mann, auch diese Frau, der Mann, die Frau und der Mann. Also zusammen haben wir 6 Personen. Und es wird gesagt hier unten jetzt hier draußen schmeckt's am besten. Also das bedeutet, that food tastes better outside or dining out is enjoyable. Also draußen, outside schmeckt's, also tastes good, am besten. Also das ist relativ klar jetzt hier. Hier sehen wir jetzt hier die Lernziele hier, also in diesem Kapitel, also die Themen jetzt hier, also zuerst die Themen, dann die Lernziele. Also talking about places to eat and drink, ordering in a restaurant. Hopefully we'll get back in the classroom soon. That will be the basis for your first oral skit or test. Again, more about that later. No need to worry about that right now, but you'll be acting out a scene, a restaurant scene or a cafe scene of your development. The grammar, the grammatic, two-way prepositions. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. And you can see that this particular chapter also introduces the past tense of the verb sein, to be, haben, to have, and some modal verbs. The cultural unit, you guessed it, is on Essen und Trinken und Deutsche Küche, also food and drink, and German cuisine, so to speak. Und auch gibt es Videoclips und Lesen. And then hier sind die Lernziele, the learning goals. Excuse me, that after studying this chapter, you'll be able to talk a little bit about eating and drinking establishments in German-speaking countries. You'll be able to order food and beverages, distinguish between different kinds of eateries, about how to pay the bill. In particular, you want to use the Z form. We'll talk a little bit about that. And also, here's some other sort of information. Those of you using Deutsch nach Klar for the first time, I think this is helpful. Oftentimes when you're learning a foreign language, it can seem like entering a big ocean of things that you need to learn. You never feel fluent enough to be able to navigate in a feel-good way. And so if you look at these learning goals in each chapter, even being able to do a couple of these is always will give you a good indication about what you have learned or what you still need to learn or would like to learn. So, machen wir weiter jetzt hier. Also die nächste Frage jetzt hier ist, wie gesagt, alles klar. Und hier haben wir zum Beispiel einige Informationen. Pizzeria Laterna jetzt hier. Italienische Spezialitäten, Pizza, Pasta, Risotto. Angebote, nämlich montags Lasagneabend, dienstags Risottoabend, mittwochs Pizzaabend und Donnerstag Calzone-Abend. Also das ist die different dishes, die verschiedenen Gerichte oder Offerings, nämlich dass dieses Restaurant anbietet. Hier haben wir einige Informationen, nämlich Telefonnummer, die Straße, Mozartstraße 43. Hier sind die Öffnungszeiten montags bis samstags von 16 Uhr, 16 Abend, nachmittags, Entschuldigung, bis 23 Uhr. Sonntag und Feiertage, also 17 bis 23 Uhr. Und auch Lieferung und Delivery, Freihaus ab 15 Euro. Das ist klar, that free delivery if you order at least 15 euros of food. Alle Angebote inklusive Salat, Wein and beer erhältlich. That means they offer wine and beer and also non-alcoholic drinks. So hier gehen wir unten jetzt hier. As wie gesagt, beantworten Sie die Fragen. So I will read these questions for you, give you a little bit of time. Again, you may want to pause this video and see if you can come up with the correct answer. In fact, they gave you the answers down here because you have the teacher's version, but still, see if you can understand the answers. Was bedeutet der Name Laterna? Really what this is asking, of course, was bedeutet, what does the name Laterna mean? Remember, German doesn't use do or does, but that's how we would translate it. Literally, what means the name Laterna? Well, Laterna, of course, is cognate with our English word lantern. And so you got a couple options here. You could either say lantern, like in English, or the lamp. So kind of going back to basic information here. Literally the pizzeria lantern just shows you that in English, especially American English, it sounds a little bit weird. If you're opening up a pizzeria, you wouldn't probably call it the pizzeria lantern, but in German it actually has a nice ring to it, believe it or not, so it doesn't sound so funny or strange in German, perhaps. Hier Nummer 2, was bietet die Pizzeria Laterne außer Pizza an? Also anbieten, das bedeutet to offer. And of course, what it's asking here is, see if you can guess what this is asking. What else, right? What else does the Pizzeria Lantern offer besides pizza? So außer pizza means besides pizza, and so that's how you would translate it, is what else does the Pizzeria Lantern offer besides pizza? And again, since we have the answers down here, we might as well point to them, but if you look at the information here, you can sort of see, right, it offers pizza, pasta, and risotto, right? And of course, those are also, and calzone, also there's a calzone Thursdays, I guess, is how they're advertising it here. So we go down here, and of course, those are our 4 answers as well, right? Nummer 3, an welchen Tagen gibt es in der Laterna Tagesangebote? Here it's asking us on which days are there like a daily lunch special or daily special, so to speak. And of course, these are the days right here: Montags, Dienstags, Mittwochs, and Donnerstags. So these would be the abbreviations that in Germany for Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So kind of an abbreviated form of that. And Nummer 4, again, I know I'm going over this rather quickly, but I would encourage you to kind of reread these questions and go back and study, this advertisement, see if you can understand this on your own. Nummer 4, welche Getränke bekommt man in der Pizzeria Laterna? Literally, which drinks can one have in the pizzeria? So those of you that took German last semester know that German doesn't use do, but literally one. So they use the third person impersonal pronoun one. So which drinks can one receive in the pizzeria, right? Probably in English you would say what drink offerings are there, or what does the pizzeria offer for drinks? Probably something like that. Und 5, wie viel Geld muss man ausgeben, wenn man etwas frei Haus bestellt? Namely, see if you can figure this one out here. It's asking how much money must you spend if you want to receive free delivery. So that's how you would translate this. Here's literally how much money must one give out if one something free house orders. But obviously that sounds weird. So the meaning of it is how much money must you spend if you want to have free delivery. And I think we mentioned earlier, Lieferung, which means delivery, is frei Haus. So if you spend at least, so ab means sort of at least, or beginning at least 15 euros, then of course, according to this, you would get free, free delivery, right? So even something like this is really how you want to approach this course. As you probably imagine, especially if you've never learned a foreign language, you can always feel a little bit, again, not overwhelmed, but it just can feel like, boy, I'm just never going to learn this. And so, like anything else, right, don't try to do too much. In all honesty, right, for this week's lesson, if you can read these questions and understand them, and you may have to read them several times, quite frankly, right, and then kind of look at this advertisement, if you can do that, that's already doing quite a lot, right? And so don't feel like you have to know everything in each chapter, or you have to know everything in the book, right? That's great if you do, but I don't know many people whose memory is so great that they're able to do that. And so just remember, less is more in most things in life, right? And so have fun, right? Have fun learning German, right? And kind of enjoy doing that here. Let's see if this works. I don't know if this will work in this format, but I'm trying it here. So I'm gonna. It says Doris hat die Uni gewechselt und studiert jetzt in Berlin. Sie ist beim Infobüro des AStAs an der FU. Hören Sie jetzt Ihr Gespräch mit der AStA-Referentin und ordnen Sie die Charakterisierungen dem richtigen Restaurant zu. And so I'm going to play this. I don't know if it'll come through in this format. We'll see. If not, just don't worry about it. But basically what you have to do here is, if you look to see, do they have that down here? Yeah. So she's going to describe a restaurant, and she's going to say about something about the atmosphere. So let's go through this here, and so we'll play it. In fact, there you have the answers down there again, but this is really listening comprehension. So I would worry less about the answers and see if you can, kind of make sense of what she's saying here. So let me go back and kind of tell you what it's saying here, right? So is that Doris has decided to go to a different university, right? So she has changed her university, and now she's studying in Berlin. And so she goes to the FU, which is the Freie Universität Berlin, kind of like like NC State, a kind of more technical engineering school, if you will. And she goes to this. Of course, nowadays people will probably just look on their phones, but nevertheless, right? She goes to right. By the way, a little pro tip here: we talk about using the phones, not to sound old, but go to the librarians. Go to the people that actually have human knowledge. And so that's sort of what she's doing here, is just going to go to this information booth or whatever. Again, nowadays we'd probably just use our phones to find out about the different restaurants available in Berlin, because she's living in Berlin maybe for the first time. And it says that we have to listen to her conversation, and then right, she's going to describe these. So let's see if this works for us here. Okay, great. So obviously, yeah, we're gonna have to listen to that again. I don't know, because we're not there in person, but you should also have access to this link. So you definitely want to play this a couple of times. A little pro tip in terms of listening comprehension. Again, it can seem very natural to want to translate from German into English. There's a couple problems with that. First of all, right, it's unlikely that your German skills are good enough to be a translator. So just sort of keep in mind, to be a translator requires superior, not just excellent, but superior language skills. You're kind of, when it's very natural to want to translate because you think, okay, let me reduce it to English, and I'm going to understand it better. But you're actually doing just the opposite. You're actually getting it, and the reason I say that, I used to think the same way when I was young. Let me try to translate it. Again, that's a very laborious, difficult, counterproductive way of learning. The best way to learn is to try to listen. Um, Again, I wish I were a better listener. Just ask my wife about that. But if you can kind of listen to the German and try to make out key words and just let the German come to you, that's the most natural. I think about how we learned our native language. We, as babies and toddlers, of course, on an unconscious level, we heard words around us, and that's basically how we learned, right, how to speak. And so, as adults, right, we kind of get in our own way, uh, um, and for a lot of reasons. But again, that's if you can learn to be patient. That's why people that study music tend to be really good in languages because they have learned to listen, right? So it's not that they know more or they're smarter or anything silly like that, but they're just good listeners. So I'm going to play this again, and I'll kind of stop it and go back and kind of walk you through this a little bit. But then you want to kind of practice this on your own, just like in your other courses, right? Your instructors, professors are giving you ideas or problems to work with. Sometimes they help you solve them. Sometimes they do solve them, but ultimately, right, you have to put in the work yourself. So let me play this again, and then I'll stop it in a couple places and see if we can't give you a little bit of context clues and even help with the language so that when you do practice this by yourself, you feel comfortable. So before I do that, what we have here are the different kinds of restaurante. Brazil, I guess, is the type here. So you want to look for that word Brazil. So when she says Brazil, what characteristics are associated with that? And then we have literally the potato seller, the Kartoffelkeller. So when she mentions that, what are the characteristics or atmosphere? What's the place like? And that's what they mean by characteristics. And then the Keller restaurant, literally the restaurant cellar. Again, what are the characteristics or what's the atmosphere like there? What's the vibe there? And then the ristorante italiano. Also, what are the characteristics, right? Now, what are the characteristics? Well, gemütlich is a good adjective. It means comfortable. It's actually a word that has a lot of different meanings in German. Now, of course, in this context, it just means the place is comfortable to be at, but whether Oktoberfest or other things that we'll talk about back in class or we have mentioned last semester, this is a important word for Germans, which we'll have to talk about that in person. I have lived in Berlin many times. I have been in the Oranienburger Straße. It's kind of a hip restaurant scene. It's kind of like Glenwood Avenue. I guess maybe that's not the best analogy, but if you've been to downtown Raleigh and Glenwood Avenue, a lot of fine restaurants there of different kinds. Oranienburger Straße sort of similar to that. Macht viel Spaß, literally makes lots of fun. So in other words, if it's fun to go there, and you can use that for pretty much any context, right? So whether it's a movie or a play or going out, let's say you want to go out with some friends. Let's say somebody invites you and you've never been out with that person. I mean, you can say, what's that person like? Well, come on, you'll have fun. It's macht viel Spaß. And so these are phrases that you could use in different contexts, not just a restaurant. Nicht so teuer means it's not so expensive. Österreichische Küche, that means it's Austrian food or Austrian cuisine. Rappelvoll, of course, it's sort of colloquial, or of course they give you the meaning here. It means crowded. Rezepte von Helene Weigel, who's a famous person in German history. And then vegetarisch, of course, means vegetarian. All right, so you got to match these up. So that's what you want to do is you listen to this. I'll play it one more time and give you just one example, or maybe two. But again, you want to practice this on your own. You're kind of listening for this word and these words. So again, don't feel like you're going to understand the entire sentence. Again, that would be translating, and that is just a counterproductive way of learning. So here we go. Of course, what she said there is that ich bin ja hier neu in Berlin. I'm new in Berlin, and my parents are coming to visit me, and I need some suggestions for where to take them. Right. So if I back it up a little bit, see if I can. I should have looked at the time here, but you get the idea. Right. So my parents are going to visit me this weekend, and I want to go to a restaurant with them. So that's pretty much exactly what she says. So I'll play that one more time. Und ich kenne mich nicht so gut aus. That means I don't know my way around very well. So again, we don't have the advantage of writing this on the board, although I guess I could use a different screen, but I'm just going to do it orally. Ich kenne mich nicht so gut aus is how you would say I don't know my way around very well, or I don't know the area very well. Kennen means to know in terms of being familiar. So here, of course, this other person says, Berlin ist eine riesige Stadt. That Berlin is a very large city. And so, in other words, you have many options. You can give you a little more precise where you might like to go. So Berlin ist eine riesige Stadt. Riesige Stadt. Berlin, I think we all know how that ist. I-S-T. Eine, E-I-N-E. Riesige or large, R-I-E-S-I-G-E. And then city, Stadt, capital S-T-A-T-D. So you hear, right? So if anybody in your group, that's what she's saying, wenn einer von euch Vegetarier ist, so if anybody in your group, i.e. your family, is vegetarian. So here's H. So now we have to match H. I'm going to back it up here so you can hear that first part again. And you have to decide, right, where to put H. Is it going to be Brazil, Kapitel Keller restaurant, Italiano, right? So you look at the names here. Again, Brazilian food is normally associated with steaks. That's probably maybe not going to be it. Here we have potatoes, which seems sensible, right? The Keller restaurant normally is schnitzel and sausage and the like. And then, Italian food, of course, has vegetarian dishes. But the point being is that, like anything else in life, right, they're already giving you pretty much the answer, right? So that's another pro tip for learning a foreign language is really trust your instincts, and because that's just how life works. Is right, you have these context clues, or you have this information or this data, however, whatever perspective you want to approach it, and like anything else, right, you put the pieces together and make the best educated guess, and then you verify it. And then you get people like myself that maybe have a little bit more experience, or whatever, to go, yep, that's it. And then before you know it, you're learning, you get more and more confidence, and that's just how knowledge works, right? So let me back it up a little bit here. There we go. So, right, so here's our answer. So if one of you is vegetarian, then I can recommend the Kartoffelkeller. So let me back that again. So you want to put H right here. So that's how that works, right? So let me do one more, and then I'll show you the answers and see. I assume you have this audio, but again, you may have to listen to this several times. I remember when I was learning German as an undergraduate many, many years ago, I probably would listen to, well, they had cassette tapes back then, but I would probably listen to these cassette tapes probably 4 or 5 times because I really wanted to learn German. And if I'm being completely honest, half the time I had no idea even what they were saying. But that's just part of the process. You got to trust the process, right? If I learn German and I'm not a native German, you can learn German. So it's just a question of just sticking with the process and trusting it, and voila, that's how life works. All right, so let me back it up a little bit here. Yeah. Oops. Aha. Right. So also, right, not only, right, not only do they offer vegetarian, but man sitzt da sehr gemütlich. So she's saying that not only do they offer vegetarian dishes, but it's really comfortable to eat there. I mean, literally to sit there. So let me back it up, and you'll hear that this information person uses the word gemütlich to describe the Kartoffelkeller. So let me back it up here. So those would be your two answers for Nummer zwei. All right. So let me back it up so you can hear the entire sequence here. So you want to have H and A for the Kartoffelkeller. Again, the key for this, and this will be the key for the entire course, is you're just matching these two words. Okay. So let me back it up a little bit. All right, so that's that one. So let me show you the answers. You can write them down. Um, but again, you'll definitely want to listen to this audio several times. Okay, so I'll give you a moment to take a note of that. Again, I assume you have your books by now. Um, again, we're using Deutsch nach klar as is indicated on the syllabus. Hopefully, we'll be in the classroom next week, but we'll see. Because definitely learning a language, it's a skill, as most things are. I guess it's good that we have this technology, but learning a language is not a content class. Content classes are much more feasible to do online because you already have enough language or skill to do the content. Learning a foreign language is more of a skill than a content class. And what I mean by that is that, let's say we're doing a reading of Goethe's Faust or Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. Well, you already have enough German to focus on the literary philosophical content. And so those are content classes. But if we're being completely honest, skill based, it's better to do this in person. So we're lucky for this opportunity, this technology, but hopefully, because of just the skill based nature of learning a language, we'll be in the classroom next week. But we definitely want to be safe. So, okay, so that is that. I'm not sure what this one is. Let's see here. I'm just going to play this. I'm not sure. Let's see. Okay, this is nice. So again, they keep these books are. I'll be honest with you. I actually used to use this book when I was teaching at Duke University, and then for whatever reason, I tended to adopt different books at Campbell. I finally went back to Deutsch nach klar just because to be honest with you, I don't have a particular reason, but so I wasn't really sure what this is because this was not in the previous version I used. But anyway, this is nice because it it has the audio, then it has the text here, right? Now, of course, with YouTube and the internet, this is not as exciting as it once was. I.e., that's the thing about learning a language. You need some kind of corrective feedback by a native speaker, that somebody that knows what they're doing. Otherwise, you may never really know if you're reading correctly or hearing correctly. So, again, with YouTube and that and the internet, right? Of course, we have too much information in one sense, too much text. But this is nice because I'm just going to play it, and it's going to describe right? This text here. Now, probably more interesting is to see if you can translate it, right? Now, again, with Google Translate and things like that, but I don't think we need to have a philosophical discussion. If a computer is doing it for you, then you're not really learning it. So, artificial intelligence is great, but it's not great for individual human learning if that is indeed one's goal, right? So, which we're going to assume it is. All right, so let me play this here. Now, as you know, you may not want to hear this, but German universities are basically free. Um, a good example of this, you can see there are some modest fees that, believe it or not, they introduced not too long ago, and Germans were in a fury about this. So you can see when they finally did introduce these fees, it was a whopping €5. Now, what this means is basically these are equivalent to student service fees. Again, the reality is it's not just at Campbell; it's across the entire United States. Is higher education has become really, really expensive, but it's still worth it. It's still worth it to get a degree. But you can see here that in Germany, they're paying €5 for the student service fees. And of course, you know how much that American students have to pay for different kinds of fees. And so, but here it's the Freie Universität. As you know, Germany has a couple of universities. I actually studied at the Humboldt Universität. It used to be called the Berlin Universität. That's where Einstein taught. That's where Karl Marx was. So I remember when I was undergraduate, standing in the halls of Einstein and Marx. I thought it was inspiring. But because of Hitler, they changed the name to the Humboldt Universität after Wilhelm and Alexander Humboldt, who are two famous educators in the early 19th century. The Freie Universität, also a great university. Again, somewhat of a simplification, but as I mentioned a few moments ago in the different activity, this is largely a more technical engineering versus like an MIT, I guess you might say. Um, you know, compared to a more academic university like the Berlin. And then they have this abbreviation, the Allgemeiner Studierendenausschuss. So say that 10 times fast, or ASTA. And it says, der ASTA hilft Studentinnen und Studenten bei großen und kleinen Problemen. So if students have problems, right, either with their studies or personal, right, finances, emotional, mental health, all the other stuff. In Germany, they would call that your private realm, literally your Privatbereich. And this place is also responsible, er ist auch verantwortlich for cultural and sporting activities. As you know, German universities generally don't have sporting teams. They have a robust club culture, which goes well beyond the university. But and so this would be the place to get involved in different kinds of clubs. As I mentioned before, again, you know how much you pay for student activity fees to use the gym, football, all the other stuff, student services. So if you combine your student services fees and your student activity fees, in Germany you would pay €5. And so that's a. And by the way, the reason I'm pausing on this is, to me, this is one of the big reasons to learn a foreign language. Again, every place has its pros and cons, but certainly higher education in Europe is a pro just because it's a lot less expensive, right? Okay, so enough of that. So that's pretty cool, right? What I want to do now is kind of give you your homework. Again, just kind of your informal homework. Again, just given our online format. But if you go to the next page, page 174, what you want to do for this is you have these different advertisements, right, if you will, or right. Um, and what you need to do is you need to read these. Of course, they're all in German. These are all taken from German realia. And of course, you have some vocabulary that's going to help you with that. But then you have to, your assignment is to do Aktivität 1, right? And you have to match, right? You have to look at the advertisements and the photos that we just saw. And just like we kind of did before, you have to match those advertisements and pictures with the particular cuisine or food that that is available. Now, once again, I'm going to ask that you guys do a little bit of work, right? Just because I want to get to the grammar. Is that, to be honest with you, right? I mean, this is kind of silly. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'll just show you, because the reality is, right? You need to know the vocab. So what you want to do is just copy and paste this. That's what I would have done when I was an undergraduate. Just copy and paste this and put it in Google Translate, and you should get a pretty good idea of what it is that is being said. So if I just do this, and oops, let's see here. I don't want to do that here. Let's see here. Let's see. This where's the copy on this here? No. Oh, I think it's because I'm using this the Screencast-O-Matic for some reason. Actually, let me just try this here. I don't know if it copied it hitting Control C. We'll find out here. So I think it's because I'm using the Screencast-O-Matic. It's doing a funky program, but I was going to say just Google. Oops, if I could type here. Translate, and then no, I didn't do it here. But you guys know this stuff better than me, and so just that's what I would do, is just copy and paste it, and you should be able to get an idea of what's going here. But back to point here, what you have to do is you have to match these pictures with these descriptions, right? And then we'll check your work on Thursday. All right. So what I would do now, though, is I want to go to, believe it or not, this is a pretty short chapter. It's like one of the shortest chapters in the entire book. I mean, which, if you think about it, right, if you go back to the very beginning of the chapter, you have the front page. So you got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. So you have only 5 pages of the regular chapter, which, if you could look at the other chapters, this is by far the shortest chapter. And then you have the grammar. So it's kind of an interesting chapter from that standpoint. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to talk about the grammar. Now, again, let's see, as I told you, this, I guess yeah, so that's pretty cool, right? I don't know if you guys have this as well, but it looks like this online version you can, because I have the regular textbook here. You can hear me hitting it. Obviously, you can't do that, but here it gives you how to pronounce these. All right. So, all right. Now you have to memorize these. So these are as I'll talk about in a moment, these are your two-way prepositions. And what that means is, you may recall, I actually said in last week's video, I was going to focus on the cases, and I decided, well, let me postpone that. But you can see that even this topic of two-way prepositions really requires, right, that these can be either in the accusative or dative case. And so that's what I was telling you last week, is that for me, the key, at least in terms of the structure, for learning German are the cases. And so here's another example that if we don't know what accusative is, we're going to have a hard time doing prepositions. If we don't know what the dative is, we're going to have a hard time doing prepositions. So prepositions are just crucial, or excuse me, cases are just crucial for learning German. And if I just, by cases, of course, I don't know if I showed you this last time, but again, you can just Google something, and of course we're talking about the der, die, das, right? So something like that. Kind of move this over a little bit so you can see it here. So this is the key. All right. So if you feel like, boy, I wish we were in class, I wish we were doing more German, what you want to do is go to YouTube and type in German cases and watch some videos on that, because this, in my opinion, in my professional opinion, is the key for making sense of German grammar. And so, but we'll talk about that in detail when we meet in person. But you're gonna have to remember these two-way prepositions. And so I think we all know the birthday song. No, I'm not a singer. In fact, I'm not sure what I am at this point in life, but we'll talk about that in person, perhaps. Actually, those of you that know me, I probably should have said this last time. I actually have a PhD in philosophy from Duke. Right now, I'm actually teaching Latin to a unique level of students. Those of you who had me last semester, you know what I'm talking about. But it's interesting to teach pirates. I'll just say that. But nevertheless, we need to remember these prepositions. So I think we all know the birthday song, right? The melody, and so that's going to be a great way to memorize these prepositions. So an auf hinteren nebenüber, an auf hinteren nebenüber, an auf hinteren nebenüber, und davor zwischen. So that's a nice mnemonic device for memorizing. Now again, the reason they're called Wechselpräpositionen, or two-way prepositions, is, get ready, you ready? These prepositions can take either accusative or dative depending on its function in the sentence. As we will see, that we will use the accusative case if the preposition is describing where to, or placement. We will use dative if it's answering where. So the where to in German is wohin, W-O-H-I-N, where to, and the where is wo, W-O. So again, if this is new for you, just be patient. But these can take either or, right? And so let me give an example here, right? You can see, in fact, this is really good for us, right? And you definitely want to study these, right? So if you can answer the question wo, or where, then we use, right, the dative case after the preposition. So this goes back to the very first day of German 101. We must learn der, die, das with the vocabulary. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll have to talk about that on a different occasion. But we need to know, as you know, let me see, I'm going to go to the end of the chapter here. Let's see here. No? Okay, so let me go back here. Well, hopefully I didn't lose the... Let me try this here. 6. Seem to have lost the... There we go. Didn't like that, so better stick with while we're ahead here. So let me back this up here. But I was just going to, as you know, that German vocabulary, well, here's a good example. Like, so die Speisekarte, well, we have to learn it's die Karte, or in this case, the menu. Or das Haus, das Gasthaus. Another good one, like Salat, it's der Salat. That's why we have the ER ending. So those of you that had German 101 with me, you know what I'm talking about. Hopefully those of you who didn't, you've had this in a previous German course, but we'll have to cover this on a different day, is that we need to know if the noun is der, die, das. Why is that important? Because otherwise we're not going to know, right, what case ending to give it, right? So for example, we need to know that it's die Bäckerei. Why is that important? Because die becomes der, so die Bäckerei, the bakery, becomes der in the dative. So we're not going to know that without just guessing, and we don't want to do that. Um, and so that's why these cases are just crucial, right? Or die Kasse. So Kasse means cash register, and so it becomes where do customers pay? An der Kasse. Where can you buy bread? At the bakery. Where can you buy fresh vegetables? Right, at the farmer's market. Where should I wait? In front of the shop. Notice that the translation of the prepositions is oftentimes going to be different than the English preposition. Again, by preposition, we mean generally there's prepositions of time and place. Similarly, again, you want to read through this chapter. If we're answering where to, notice that these same examples now are used in the accusative. So instead of saying die der, it goes die die, right? Because if we're answering where to, we need the accusative, right? So here we say, where's Frau Glately going? She's going to the bakery, right? Where's the customer going? He's going to the cash register. Where are you going? I'm going to the market. Where's Dominique going? He's going to the shop, right? Or to the grocery store, or whatever, right? And so if you can answer where, the case after the two-way preposition needs to be in the dative. If you can answer where to, it needs to be in the accusative. Obviously, this is going to take a little bit of time, but that's the basic idea here, right? So what I want you to do on this one is obviously read this section fairly carefully, right? And then what I want you to do is, let's see here, right? Let's see, this one might make more sense right here, right? Let's just start with something simple, right? And again, try your hand at this, and we'll check this in the other activity on Thursday. Is all you have to do is skim the ads, right? And it says, suchen Sie in den folgenden Anzeigen alle Präpositionen mit Dativ oder Akkusativ Objektiv. Ordnen Sie ein. So what you're going to do is, it says right here in English too, but you're going to just skim these ads and write down the prepositional phrases in the dative that are answering where. So in this case, in the old Forsthaus, or where to, right? And then you're just simply going to put together a list, right? So again, you're not translating, you're just kind of identifying. So also by mit, again, there's many of them, but here we have hinter. So it's das Theater. So das becomes dem in the dative. So if we're saying behind the Schloss Theater, we have to say hinter dem because we're answering where, right? See how that works, right? This one's a little bit easier just because it's smaller. So it's saying, right, if you want to enjoy yourself, go to the movies. Well, where to? Where should we go to if we want to enjoy ourselves? To the movies. So it's das Kino for movies. So we have to say ins Kino because we need the accusative, because das Kino, right, is das still in the accusative. Again, if this is new for you, this is going to seem, very sort of, it's, not confusing, but it's going to seem, but the German grammar is actually very structured. It all comes down to these two questions. If it's where, you have to use the dative, location. If it's where to, you got to use the accusative, direction. The bigger challenge in my experience is if you don't know the cases and you don't know der, die, das. So for example, if you don't know it's die Bäckerei, all this other grammar stuff is kind of beside the point. So ultimately it is, again, Shakespeare's easy if you know the vocabulary. If you don't know vocabulary, even though we're native English speakers, we have no idea what he's saying. Yeah. So that's pretty straightforward activity, right? Nothing fancy. The main thing is I want you to preview this, right? In fact, those of you that had, and maybe we'll kind of end on this note. Again, you probably won't be able to access this video until after midnight or tomorrow or whatever, right? Just look at it when you can. Just because when I upload it on YouTube, I think they whatever reason they take a few hours to publish it or whatever. But I think that the main thing you ought to be doing is just kind of previewing and just kind of browsing and working through each chapter. So like this grammar section in this chapter, right? Just kind of browse it and familiarize yourself with it so that when we do meet, either virtually or in person, right? And this will be true when we meet in class, is it's not the first time you're hearing this. So that is, so you always want to be kind of previewing ahead of me, right? So, so make sure that you have browsed and previewed chapter 6 by Thursday, so that Thursday and next week, when I talk about elements in the chapter and we work with elements in the chapter, you're not seeing it for the first time, because that goes back to the skill idea. Skill is basically practice, 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 like sports, right? And if you're just seeing it for the first time, you're going to have a hard time following what I'm saying and trying to explain, because you just haven't practiced it enough, quite frankly, right? So make sure that you get comfortable with how to hold a baseball bat or golf clubs. Again, there's that skill analogy, so that when we do get to the vocabulary in the German in the textbook, you're not seeing it for the first time. All right, so we did a little bit tonight, right? Just kind of get acquainted with each other a little bit more, and and this ultimately what we want to get out of this chapter is that you're able to talk a little bit about German restaurants and ordering in a restaurant. And of course, that will be the basis for your first oral skit or test, as I was saying last time. And so sort of keep that in mind when we talk about all these other things in this chapter. Ultimately, your goal is to acquire enough vocabulary and grammar so that when you do your skit, like for example, we didn't do this tonight, but obviously this will be perfect, right? So if you could just memorize this, and we'll do this next time, right? Right? If you could just memorize this, right? So if you can just memorize this, for example, you'll be in really good shape for what you're supposed to get out of each chapter, and you'll do very fine in the class. All right, so I'm going to save this and upload it and send you the link. And then on Thursday, the plan is to try to meet online using one of these Blackboard tools. Hopefully it works. If not, I'll just have to make another video. But the plan is I'll try to figure it out tomorrow. It shouldn't be too difficult, right? Hopefully, right? But just to make sure it works. But plan on Thursday, right, getting a link or however it works, so you can join the meeting, the class meeting, so we can talk a little bit about this person, so give you guys a chance to work on your communicative German. Also, so wir sehen uns, wir sprechen uns Donnerstag, und ich wünsche euch alles Gute und auf Wiedersehen.